Excellent. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the Secrets of Success podcast, where we talk about all things never be outworked, and you're certainly one of those examples of those on many fronts. So, welcome to Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Shane Needham. Today, I have Ryan Scaggs. He's a friend and a colleague and a mentor, and just so many things. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let me do some introductions here. So, we are on the Secrets of Success podcast. And you can find myself, Shane Needham, Dr. Shane Needham, on many social media platforms, including, and I don't know how to pronounce the latest one, but Parler, Parler, whatever it is. That's a new one for me. So you can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, and you can also find me on Instagram as well. And as far as podcasts go and more information, you can see my website at drsneedham.com and find out more information about me there. And we have a lot of our previous podcasts archived there. You can also find previous podcasts on the typical podcast platforms, such as iTunes, such as YouTube, such as Spotify, and SoundCloud as well. So thanks again. And thanks to everybody who's made this show such a great show. Our theme is never be outworked. Of course, I'm a scientist. I'm also a bodybuilder. I'm also a father. I'm also a disciple. I'm also a power lifter. I'm an MC. I'm a podcaster. So I'm many things. Well, our theme is typically never be outworked. And so we talk about anything about, we're going to have some scientists on. We had one on a couple weeks ago. We're going to have some more on in a couple of weeks. Scientists, relationships, business, so many different things, and some really exciting topics coming up as well. So thanks for following me. Like our program, go to any of those platforms, go to my website, like it. You can sign up for our newsletter as well and be informed of when we have more details coming up. So Ryan, thanks again for joining us. We have a great topic today, and it's called Dadvocacy. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
And it's basically the value of an active and present dad in a child's life. Now, I want to, before we move on, this is a very important topic and it's dear to my heart. And before anybody starts making assumptions, I want to be very clear on this. This is a very, very important topic that not a lot of dads have actually courage to talk about. But these things happen. How important it is in a dad's life. We are in general taught in society how important a mom is. And believe me, Ryan and I both agree that moms are important.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you, are just as important, moms and dads. Let me tell you my story so we don't have any assumptions here. When I was a child, my parents divorced. They actually divorced twice from each other. They got married twice to each other and then got divorced twice. But when I was between the age of 12 and 14, and this is years ago, decades ago, obviously, because I turned 50 tomorrow, actually. And, well, thank you very much. My mom, because of mental health issues, and my twin brother's probably watching, kept me from my father from the age of 12 to 15. And my twin brother and I finally, at the age of 15, we said, that's it. We're going to see my dad. We weren't allowed to call him dad in our house. We had to call him by our first name. We were told all kinds of horrible things about him. And it's taken me 40 years to unwind all that. But I have an older brother who was also affected during the divorce. And my mom used him as a sounding board for all of her feelings, for all of her emotional baggage, and to basically disenfranchise him from my dad. And he's never had a relationship with him.
Alienation.
And it's horrible. It's horrible. And obviously he's an adult now. He can make those choices himself. I'm telling you from my own story that now 40 years of this and unwinding all this, how important it is to understand how important it is to have a healthy relationship with each parent, even after divorce. And also, this is a dadvocacy program. So we are going to be talking about dads, how important they are. And we're also going to be talking about how that dad, as a healthy parent, should watch for some unhealthy behaviors from the mother. I'm not saying that dads don't have unhealthy behaviors. I'm not saying dads are not bad, just like some moms aren't bad. Dads aren't good. Dads are good and moms are good, okay? And they're both designed by God. But this program is about dads, okay? So that's what we're going to be talking about because dads are afraid to talk about it. And I am so appreciative of all you dads that have sent me some Facebook messages, some texts, and some of you moms as well. One person actually said, make sure you don't say all moms are bad. This is why I'm saying this. I appreciate your comments, and I was never going to do that. I'm going to tell my story. I already did, and now it's Ryan's turn. But that we're going to be talking about dads, because Ryan is like a number one dad. I just love what he does with his son. And so, Ryan, you're up. Introductions.
Yeah, so I am a proud dad of a soon-to-be 5-year-old. So actually, my birthday was last week too. So happy birthday for the November babies!
Oh,
yeah.
Are you Scorpio?
Yeah, I turned 36 last week. So
yeah, so you're a Scorpio. No, I'm not
yeah.
connected. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's been an adventure. I mean, when you go through life, you don't expect to like have to go through divorce and all that stuff. And we, both as believers and everything in our life, we know what God's design is for the house and what it's supposed to look like. And at the same time, that's not always what happens. And so I will preface right off the bat saying I was a horrible communicator. When I was married, I sucked at it. And, I would stuff my feelings. I would kind of eat it. And part of it was because I didn't feel that there was a place that I could vocalize or verbalize my displeasure with things and how they were going, or even feel validation that my feelings even mattered. And so in that process of divorce and everything, and that's a huge, deep story in itself because it does involve a lot of messy details and things like that. I mean, and feel free to ask questions too if you want, Shane.
And Ryan, I know your story, and I probably don't know all the details. I know some of them, and feel free to share them.
Yeah.
I mean, because the thing of it is, what I'm finding is on my podcast, I'm going to talk about difficult issues. And I'm seeing a lot of people online already commenting and whatnot. This is really cool, Ryan. It's really, really cool. This is an important topic, but if you've gone through it, other people have gone through it.
Okay.
And they want to hear your story. So if you think it's important, we're just going to let this be organic. Focus on Dadvocacy, but how did you get there? And I want to say, first of all, I agree with you. God designed marriage, and that is supposed to be how it is. It doesn't always work that way.
We screw it up. Yeah, we as people screw it up. Yeah, we screw it up. Yeah,
and I'm to blame, just like you're to blame, just like two parties are to blame.
Absolutely.
Now, what I want to preface with you too, Ryan, because I know your story, and I want this to be very careful to dads out there. Dads are designed by God to absolutely be protectors, and in my opinion, there's no other way. That's how they're designed. Yeah. Okay, and I guarantee you, Ryan, you probably feel the same way, correct?
Absolutely.
So one thing we do, and I saw you do it already, Ryan, and that's good because that gives you accountability and responsibility. You blamed yourself for a lot of the things that were wrong in your marriage. Now, I know some of the things. It
wasn't all my fault.
Right. That's what I want to get to, is that I know some of those details. There was nothing you were going to do to change some of those things. Some of those behaviors, there was just no way. Great that you recognize your part in it. But I think as men and as dads, we'll get to dads in a minute and then give you more time. As men, we tend to protect and feel sorry. So sometimes that lets us be in abusive relationships. And I think from my point of view, you were in an emotionally abusive relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
And you allowed it because you're probably like, she's the woman. And I respect that. I'm not a pastor. I don't know how to answer that. But I think it gets to a point where we have to be able to say, okay, God, what do you want me to do here? What's best for me and my child? So
it goes down to the level of vows. And I think it's character that I know you value too. And that's loyalty. I mean, loyalty is huge. And, I said my vows, and even in divorce, I still honored them. And it sounds really weird to say that. And so if you're out there and you're divorced, like, you can be divorced for biblical reasons, and you can still honor your vows and still honor them after you're divorced. And if you share a kid, you can still honor those things by, love, it looks different ways. Love is wanting what's best for somebody. You don't have to have the romantic feelings for that individual, but you can advocate for that person if there's health issues. I don't want to go into diagnosis for somebody else. That's the thing that I will be cognizant of in this, is that I will try to protect health information. So I will be more reflective on what happened to me and what I went through. But when you are with somebody that has emotional distress and they reflect that on you in the relationship, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Let's just put it that way. I mean, and I know that you felt that too in your stuff. We've talked about this at length before. it starts little things, like little minimalizations of things as a man, whether it's demasculation or it's devaluation of your role in the household. You're not good enough. You're not present enough. You're not good with money. All these things
You're
that you
not a
might
good
hear.
dad. You're not a good.
You're not a good. You're a crappy husband. You don't treat me right. You ignore the kid. You're more worried about your things than what you want to do. I mean, I've heard it all. And
so it's called gaslighting. They're exaggerating.
Yes, absolutely. It's gaslighting.
And it's extremely emotionally abusive.
Absolutely.
And other terms that you've probably heard that I find disgusting: toxic masculinity, alpha males are horrible. I mean, all kinds of things about the male species. And these are what's interesting. I bet. Have you heard those terms before, Ryan?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know what's odd to me?
Projection is another one. I mean, projection was huge.
Yes. Yeah. Like, anyway, we won't get into too much projection, but I like the toxic masculinity one when the mother calls you a toxic male and they have a son.
Yeah.
You're thinking,
oh, it's a nightmare. And I'll just say this. Yeah. I mean, the one thing, and there's a book that I'm reading now, it's called Killing Lines, and it's by John Eldridge and his son, Sam. It is an amazing book. So if you get a chance to read it, if you're a dad, do it. Put it on your list, get it in your hands.
We'll put that on the podcast too.
Yeah, it addresses some of these issues, but you know, as a man, we're designed to be a certain way. We're designed in our nature. I mean, it's into our DNA, and culture is trying to screw with that and unwind it. And if you're with somebody that has issues when it comes to whether it's mental health or if it's emotional distress, whatever it might be, and they have that feeling of toxic masculinity being a negatory connotation, generally, I'm going to say it probably 99% of the time, it's because they either had issues with a weak father in their household, no father in their household. And I'm going to hurt some people by saying this.
No, you're not. You're going to help.
I'm going to help people too. Or it has a lot to do with having issues with discipline, receiving and taking discipline and criticism. And so
you just did a lot of diagnosis for me. Thank you. Tell me about why you think. I want to ask you this because you're obviously well studied on this.
Yeah.
Why do you think the projection of toxic masculinity in your household, for an example, would mean that they had a weak father or a father that didn't maybe give a lot of discipline? Why would you say that? I think you're right. I'm trying to unwind it.
I mean, I'm not throwing anybody on the bus, but I mean, yeah, you see it. I mean, you see it. And the other thing too is just interaction when you try to put your foot down on something and you're the male figure, and then there is an extreme amount of pushback and it's a horrible idea. I mean, just going to say it right off the bat. Yeah. And I'm not saying that men are always right because we are boneheads too. But at the same time, when it's issues that it's a hard line, like a biblical issue, and you're putting your foot down on it, and there is an extreme amount of pushback to that, I recognize it. And then if I try to look back at the other figures, history tells a lot. I mean, we're a culture that wants to write history out of the books. Yeah. History tells us almost everything that we need to know. And we are creatures of habit. And so if there is a history there and there's a habit of doing this whenever you put your foot down on something, especially when it's a hardline issue, and you see that pushback, you go back and look to see if it's the same way somewhere else, and you're going to see that history of that behavior showing up. Guaranteed it'll be there.
And I want to be clear before we have any haters on here. We are. I know Ryan, and I know his heart. We are not like these authoritarian figures that don't let females influence us at all.
I coached girls tennis for 5 years. I mean, like, I'm probably the biggest softie when it comes to,
But I think he's talking about some big issues that I'm just going to bring to light. Okay. Not necessarily that they're his. I'm just saying in general, these are issues that you talk to your, for example, your spouse about, your wife, and you say, no, adultery is not okay. No, having sex with other people is not okay. Substance abuse is not okay. And they freak out about that. And they don't want to follow those boundaries. Those are huge issues. So what Ryan, huge. And obviously I don't think many people who are married would disagree with what I just said. So I want to be very careful. This is not about saying you spent 33 cents more than you were supposed to on your budget last month. No, it's not saying that. Okay. So I think we got to be very clear. These are some big, big issues that a lot of these types of people that probably had weak fathers in their lives, they don't know what boundaries are. They've never had consequences. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
This is great. Ryan, we're getting all kinds of likes online. This is great. This is really great. Keep it going. Keep being authentic.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll just kind of start at the beginning. You find out certain things in the relationship, and I was lucky that I've got a pastor up here that is an amazing human being. And like you and I, very involved in the wrestling community, so we connected very well. And getting insight from him on what I went through and was going through, and even what my spouse at the time was going through, because there were things that I had to be cognizant of and had to be sensitive to as well. And there's a lot of sacrifice that's involved with that too, on their end, but also on my end. I mean, there was a lot that I had to do and had to give up in order to try to make things work. And you go into crisis mode and you're willing to do whatever it takes. And the horrible part about that situation is when you go into crisis mode and try to do whatever it takes, and that person is actually taking advantage of that situation. Yeah. That's not okay. That is not okay. And so in that process, I mean, there was a 3-month span where I was alone with my son in the house, and you know, kind of getting used to that process, and just through the time, I mean, prayer was huge in my life, and not just from me, but I had people praying for me. And you know, the power that's in that of giving a chance for people to have access to you in a time of crisis and sensitivity and all that thing, vulnerability. You know, that's stuff that I'll never forget. And going through that process, a lot of things were uncovered. And so, you know, there came a day that, you know, I filed for divorce. And it was actually at the encouragement of not just my pastor, but my family, and other things, that it's like, Ryan, this is the thing you've got to do, because you continue into this relationship, it's going to tear you apart. And it was having an effect on me. I mean, I was going through the signs of depression and anxiety and things like that, which as a, you know, society now, men in our age group, Shane, are the #1 affected group of depression and suicide, hands down, not even close. And that was something that, you know, I've seen and not to get off on a tangent, but
please,
I've seen 3 of my kids that I've coached commit suicide, and it's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. That it's had a huge effect on me, and I didn't want to dabble in those dark thoughts and give a foothold for that to affect me the rest of my life, and then turn around and look and have that affect my kid. And so it was crisis mode. Was like, I've got to cut this out, because this is cancer. And cancer, you've got to get rid of it right away. You cannot let it fester and sit and just hope that it fixes itself. Right. And, you know, I mean, so
bottom line is from what I understand is in these situations that I've heard about before, and that's why pastors are critical. Because when a pastor, and I've heard these stories, when a pastor tells you to get a divorce, you know it's bad.
Yeah.
You know it's bad. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sorry you went through it. And, you know, a lot of people will say, well, divorce is failure. No, divorce is sometimes the most courageous thing that you'll ever do.
Absolutely.
And it's especially as a believer, because, you know, it's clear in the Bible, God hates divorce.
And he doesn't hate and the thing is that I came to the realization is God doesn't hate the act of divorce because sometimes it's necessary. He hates what it does to our heart, because that's where the real damage takes place. He hates what it does to the home. He hates what it does to other people. And it's a division of love. If God's love, that's his design, right? Divorce is the antithesis of that in some sense, whether it's for ourselves or for another person. That's why God hates divorce. But in that, there's a victory to be said. And the victory is that you can start loving yourself. I was able to, like, finally one day, like, take a deep breath, and I didn't have to wake up in the morning alone. I mean, in a sense, I'm still alone, but in the other senses, I was married for 2 years and still was alone. I mean, like, let's be honest.
I've heard those stories. It's like when you actually break away, you actually feel less alone than when you're with that person. Because when you're with a person that, and a lot of these times, from these stories that I've heard, these people actually can't give love. And I'm just going to say, there's some narcissistic personalities here, and it's a spectrum disorder. I'm not here to diagnose. I have a PhD, but I don't have a PhD in psychology. It is a spectrum disorder. And there are traits there. Those people actually with mental health issues can't love or be loved. And here's what I was going to earlier. A lot of times as men, because we feel as protectors to our kids and society, especially somebody like Ryan, he's a wrestling coach, he's, an entrepreneur, all these things, and a believer, we want to protect these people. So we feel sorry for them at our own demise.
You think you can fix it, and that's the problem. Yeah.
Well, you become codependent, right?
Yeah, that's dangerous ground. That is dangerous ground.
Good. So you're thinking, you're so lonely, even though you're close to this person physically because you're in their household, but you're lonely. And so then when you pull away, you're like, oh my gosh, I have a whole new life. I don't have to be projected. I don't have to be projection behavior. There's no gaslighting. There's no volatility, and sometimes with a lot of these types of disorders, they go along with insecurity, codependency, hostility towards others, including physically, depression, anxiety, and those are all issues. I get it. And I feel sorry for them, but it doesn't mean it's the dad's or the husband's problem to fix anymore.
Yeah.
It gets to a point where it's like, if you can't get outside that victim box, I can't help you.
Yeah. And I think that this conversation, obviously dadvocacy, being a huge thing that we're talking about and being so important, but this relationship aspect that you and I are talking about right now, there is no gender boundary line. This happens both sides.
That's right.
And so I want to make that very clear. Like, it's not every woman is trying to take advantage of a guy and gaslight them, and not every man is doing the same thing.
Correct.
And so I want to be cognizant of that because, frankly, I don't care if I offend people at times. But
that's totally fair. Yeah. I mean, I think that's very fair. I mean, we are talking about dadvocacy because it doesn't get talked about a lot.
No.
I so wish that single dads were celebrated like single moms.
Oh my gosh, it hurts sometimes. I mean, and I don't look for kudos. I don't ever go seeking somebody to pat you on the back. And my parents are amazing people. They're the best people I know, hands down. They're very cognizant. Every day or two, they send me a message of how proud they are of me. And I'm 36 years old. It's like,
that's awesome.
I mean, but I had a great example of who to look at growing up of what it means to be a great parent. I know what a great mom looks like because my mom is, I'm going to settle all arguments. I have the best mom in the world, and nobody's going to argue with me about that. And as far as a dad goes, I mean, my dad you talk about sacrifice. I mean, he left an amazing job as a business consultant to start a nonprofit that helps people out of incarceration and community intervention. So like, I've got people that, you talk about either sacrifices or support, that I have no better like litmus test to put that against than my parents. And so I mean, I get to start a little bit ahead of the 8 ball in my journey as a parent because I've had such a great example. And that's certainly helped me in my process and transition through this because they've been so amazing. So rabbit trails again, but it's okay. In my life as a parent and through this transition of being single, all of a sudden, boom, the day happens. Like you file, they're out of the house. It's like that 500-pound gorilla, kind of gets lifted off your shoulders. Yeah. But what's left is like, dude, there was days, I don't know if you had these, but like you feel like the most broken human being in the world because you think you're like, holy crap, now I'm single. Now what? I'm this piece of crap that's single. All these things that you were always told, now you're that and single. And so it's replacement, man. You've got to replace those lies. And those are absolute just negative, spewed, just trash that's been put on you. That's not true. I mean, and you have to put value on that. And I'll just talk about narcissism because I faced it. And it's, how do you defeat a narcissist? Anybody that's watching wants to know how to defeat a narcissist. You have to give them a place. You have to give it a value, a name. You have to put it somewhere that you recognize it, and that's where it stays. You do not internalize a single thing that you hear.
And you don't try to rationalize because it
will never make sense.
It's not reasonable. And it's like trying to clear boundaries. Very clear.
Absolutely. And everything is matter of fact.
That's right.
So if you kind of joked around like you don't co-parent, but it's also true. You
can't co-parent with a narcissist.
You can in the legal sense, yes.
That's true.
In the actual sense, it is boundaries, like you said, boundaries, and everything goes back to there's only one team, and it's the kid. And if it violates that team, that's a violation of the rule. And so if it goes outside of that and it starts to attack you, get out, leave the conversation. And I've had to do it so many times to where like you start to like, you start getting that finger coming back at you, and you put them on mute, and it drives them crazy, and I don't care.
Well, tell me your story. This is great. So tell me the story. You file. Now, did you leave the home, or did she leave the home? She
left the home. So I didn't want to disrupt the everyday. I wanted as much consistency as possible.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not always possible in these situations. So, I mean, there's an exception to the rule, but there's a lot of sacrifice in order to keep that in place.
Yeah.
So I had to make some sacrifices for that to happen. But I stayed in the house. I filed. I went and got an attorney. And I won't name drop because as a male, you will learn lessons that attorneys always don't have your back.
True.
Man, the system automatically, I will say this 100%, and I'll stand on this until we fix the way society looks at things. Dads are at a disadvantage right off the bat. Boom. Automatically you're at a disadvantage.
Yep.
And so I had
not only with custody, but also financially.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't get there's no services for dads if you're a single dad. I mean, you want to go file for assistance. Generally, dads are the earners. Generally, not always. You want to go file for assistance in your single income household and you get majority custody. Guess what? It's not there. You're not going to get like those outreach groups that look for single dads to go help them out. It's like you just do it. I mean, that's the job as a dad, is just to do it.
It's just assumed that the mom will get primary custody. And I mean, this is 30 some years ago when my parents just got divorced, but certainly it was just a no brainer. And I guess I understand now. I've only learned this the last 2 years. My dad's attorney told my dad, well, you can continue to fight this, but you'll spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars and you still probably won't get any custody.
I will just tell you this.
It's unfortunate.
Expect it to, 1, take forever. 2, cost a ton of money.
And here's what I can tell you. Your kids will thank you for it in the end. And
it's
they will
worth it.
You. I'm not going to give you Ryan's politics, but I bet he's a little bit libertarian. He doesn't like laws. There's actually, I don't mean we don't like laws. Most of them we can do with less laws. Okay,
yes,
would you agree
let's
with
put
that?
it that way. There we go.
It's not to mean that we're law-breaking citizens, okay? But there is actually some people, there's a couple of groups that actually want a national law that says child custody will be 50-50 unless there is substance abuse, domestic violence. There's these crazy things that are happening, which I know none of those happen in your case. Otherwise, it's just 50-50. It would save the court systems. It would save hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's the problem, that the courts kind of like battles. It's how they pay for things.
There is a lot of money to be made in court cases. Mine, prime example number 1. But so the first, and I'll go back to my story because we're going to address this issue like head on. Is I get an attorney. The divorce literally took 30 days. The divorce was easy, done. I don't know about your situation, but like mine was, it couldn't be over quick enough. Both parties, which was awesome. The messy part was that the child custody case took 2 years. And so there was a lot of pushback there, and it kept coming back to, well, your dad, and it's like, so I'm parent. Let's remove the title and just say, like, if you wanted to do blank example, parent A, parent B, don't explain what gender role it is. I'm sorry, but I look like a mom, and it's, I mean, by society standards, and that's a really dangerous ground.
You're right. The things, the actions and behaviors that you have and what you do with your child, you would look like a conventional mom.
Yeah, or a single mom. I mean,
exactly.
And which is okay. I mean, but at the same token, I love being dad. I mean, that's the best job I've ever been given, and it's my favorite thing to do. Like I always, me, because we got to know each other through coaching, and I mean, I love coaching, man. That was 15 years. And, whether it's club, high school, junior high, whatever, I hung my hat on it. And we get given identities, and all of a sudden here I'm holding, this thing in my hands that, my son, when he's born, and it's like, everything changed. I mean, literally, you talk about things, it's like total different perspective instantaneously. And I wanted everything in my life to be channeled back to him. And
and you do a good job of that. And I want to get to that, is like, dads, if you're going through this or you've gone through it, and remember, custody is never over if your kids are minors. That you're always fighting for them. And I would recommend you always fight for them. Now, I know Ryan, I know his personality. He's a wrestler. Yep, I'm biased to them because they do what it takes, okay? But you can't just be your conventional dad. You've got to step up to the plate.
Absolutely. You got to go above and beyond.
That's right. You've got to change your whole schedule. Your time is not your own. You know how to cook meals. You know how to do things. You know their school schedule. You go to parent-teacher conferences. You know their teachers. You go see this is not an easy thing.
No,
and probably, especially in a single earner home like you guys had, the mom typically kind of fulfills a lot of those roles. And I know that's the experience that I've had. Well, now I do those things. I do them all.
Yeah, and I could do it gladly. Like I
do too. I like it.
Don't get me wrong. I like the 6-hour break or something like that once in a while. Like, it's really nice. But and it's.
Well, wait till your son gets older. It's going to be more fun when you're hunting and you're fishing and you're biking and you're doing all these things that boys like to do.
Yeah.
And so you talk about, so basically your attorney already tells you you're a dad. So tell me how that battle starts.
So I fired her. She screwed up on some paperwork. Screwed up on some paperwork, and not just once or twice, but like 3 times. And so, because I was pushing for a few orders that are very rare for dads to get. And it was in the immediacy of the situation that I saw was, everything I did, I channeled back to my kid. What's best for him? What does he deserve? And, so I got a different attorney, somebody that was very highly spoken of. And, I just got to say this, vet everybody. If they're going to represent you, vet them, because you can have the best according to everybody. And I would have probably gone with somebody else. And just because the best doesn't mean the best, it's just because they've been paid the most money. Let's just be honest. There was probably a young attorney out there that would have represented me and gone absolutely full guillotine bulldog and just ran over people just to try to make a name. And, but the biggest thing is I learned I had to advocate for myself. That was boom. And in that is the blessing in all of this, because as much money as it cost and as much frustration that I went through, I learned how to advocate for myself. I learned how to believe in myself, do my own research. I mean, I was doing legal research that I probably shouldn't have had to do, but I was doing it.
Isn't that bizarre? It's like,
it's crazy.
You're telling your legal counsel, what about this case?
Yeah.
Oh,
like, what about an ex parte? And they don't expect you to know what that means. And you're like, you think I'm an idiot? Like, come on. I'm like just some fuddy-duddy. Like,
well, what's interesting to think about that is think about dads. Again, we're talking about dadvocacy here. Don't expect, it's just like when you're wrestling or you're coaching, nobody is going to teach you more than yourself. Period.
Absolutely. Reps, man. Put in the time.
Put in the work. Put in the work.
Do the work.
Just because you hire somebody that's this best attorney ever, they don't know your exact details. They don't have all the information that you have.
They don't know my resolve. They don't know what happens behind my front door when I close it.
That's exactly right. They don't know all those details, or the alienation that's occurred on the other side, and all these kind of things. And so you're going to have files of information that that you have to collect. And we don't want to make it sound like this is easy, because it's difficult.
It's the hardest thing you will go through.
Yes, because the courts already say you're a dad, so you're not as good as a parent. Society kind of assumes that too. And we'll talk about this in a minute. There's people that surprise me when a dad just says, all I'm looking for is 50-50. And a friend who is a mom of yours says, well, I just know moms are really special. Yeah, so are dads.
Yeah. I think we're all special. What are you talking about?
It doesn't mean you get special privileges because you're a mom. You need a mom and a dad. And so be your own advocate. So talk about that. Sounds like you definitely were your own advocate. Keep going, Ryan.
Yeah. So, I mean, in advocating for yourself, you're going to bang your head against the wall and ask why a lot. Like a lot. You're going to wonder why deadlines get pushed back, why things don't get processed as fast as you want. When you have court orders, you're going to wonder why that they take so long to come through and bring out the right information, question everything coming from the other side. And that was the thing that, like, if I had just accepted everything that came out, I probably wouldn't have 50-50. And that's the crazy part in all of this, is that, you know, you have to keep digging. You've got to, as a dad, and this goes for moms too, in your custody cases, you've got to keep just digging at things, trying, and not necessarily to bury the other party, but it's to protect yourself, but your kid. You've got to protect your kid too. Yeah. And so if you're in a situation where it gets ugly and there's neglect or abuse or whatever that there is that's involved, but there's no criminal act, you've got to be able to present the clear case of what is best for your kid. What's going to be out there that's going to prove that, you know, your household is going to be best long-term. Best is also a subjective term. So you have to, the court can't accept the best argument. You have to provide fact. What is happening? What does the consistency look like? What does your daily routine look like? What is the involvement with family? That is huge. The alienation part doesn't just stop at you. It stops at the rest of your family too. If you're going to go through alienation, I'm sure that you faced it too, but there was time, my parents, they didn't get to have a relationship with my kid for the first 16 months of his life. Like, it's something that they can't get back.
Oh, believe me, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. My family was horrible, you know, can't ever be around them. Yeah.
And
now building those relationships with your children, with your side of the family, is just huge. And you can see obviously you have good parents, and I guarantee you they're good grandparents. And
they're amazing grandparents. Yeah.
Yeah. Your son just bonds with them. And so that's amazing. Ryan said a really good thing that he talks about facts. So one thing that you'll see a lot of times is, I don't understand it why. And Ryan already said you'll ask why a lot. And you ask why a lot. And I just want you to know, especially people that are logical, you won't get that question answered. The why will never be answered, because there's no reasonable or rational way of thinking when you have possibly somebody on the other side. And I saw this with my brother and I and my parents' divorce, is my mom, for example, would just say things without fact.
Yeah.
It was just pure gaslighting and projection. In other words, it was just an exaggeration of reality. Well, when you start doing those things and you're exaggerating reality and you don't have facts, yet somebody like Ryan has facts and data, that other person looks very incredible. And eventually a judge does see through that. A judge does see through it.
No, and that's the thing too, is that, you know, sometimes you want to ask the why. It's more the what. It's more the how. It's more the when.
What now?
Yeah, what now? Yeah. Like more and more than anything, you want to try to look at the other person. You don't have control over that. What you do have control over is yourself and what you do, what you choose, what choices you can make. And so my choice was, what do I have control over? I have control over my effort. I have control over my time. I've got control over my talents. I've control over all of that stuff. That's where the treasure is, right? Like that, it's not going to be in winning my kid over because the other party doesn't do this. No, it's going to be, my kid's going to have a good life because this is what I do and who I am. Like, you have to stay very matter of fact. And almost like, I mean, I made, literally, it sounds silly, but I made a mission statement of what I was going to be as a dad. And
it doesn't sound silly at all.
Yeah. I'm the same. I mean, we do it all the time with coaching, and you know, what do we want our team to look like? Well, this is what I want our team to be. And my team here at my house, you know, we're gonna follow Jesus. One, like, that's rule number one. But rule number two is we're gonna love others. We're gonna be generous.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously that's rule one, love God. Number two, love others. But it's something that, you know, what outside of that, it's all kind of all-encompassing. It's an all-encompassing role. But, you know, in my role as dad, I have to make sure that I'm having that vertical relationship and reflection of how I treat my son. I'm not going to provoke him. I'm going to raise him in discipline. I'm going to raise him in instruction and comfort and encouragement. Like, I'm going to raise him in those things that are all biblical standards. That's what's going to set me apart from anything else that happens anywhere else that I don't have control over. He knows that if he comes, he's going to have that stability of discipline, instruction, comfort, and effort. And that's a direct out of a Bible verse, but
awesome.
Just to say,
I love it. I'm getting chills. That's awesome, Ryan. That's awesome.
And it's going to be a safe space. And, you know, he can have a great time at mom's house. Awesome. I'm going to support it. He can have a great time. He's allowed to. If he has a bad time, I'm still going to comfort him, and I'm going to be there for him. And he's going to have bad times. He's going to have bad days. You know, I'm not going to ever discourage a relationship with the other parent. I'm not going to try to alienate him myself, because that makes me no different than the other party.
No, you encourage it. You encourage that relationship.
Absolutely.
You want it to be the best, no matter what they are doing on the other side. And you said something that's really important. So for people that are going through, you know, a divorce and there's a custody battle involved, and these, remember, the custody battle is over when they're minors. If you're in Idaho anyway, sometimes that can go on and in other states, but you're still going to have these issues of alienation their whole lives. My mother still does it, and she's 70 some years old, and it's ridiculous. It's unhealthy, and I've just tuned her out. Okay, because it's not. My dad doesn't do it to my mom. My dad's always encouraged a relationship with my mom. For us, even if it wasn't a healthy one, he's like, well, you should at least go see her, right? But you said something that's really important, Ryan, because what happens in these battles is, and it's difficult. And I know your son was younger when you guys divorced, but one of the parents wants to be the fun, loving friend parent.
The Disneyland parent? Yeah.
The Disneyland parent. Yes, that's a perfect term. And here's what I want to caution you, especially dads. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
What I can tell you, yes, you're going to have fun with your kids, but and I want you to talk about this, and I can certainly talk about with my teenagers, when you set boundaries with them, and it's going to be difficult if you came from a household where you couldn't have boundaries with your children, you set boundaries with them, they will respect you and love you even more. And boy, that first year of doing that when you've got teenagers is a nightmare. But stick to your guns. Can you talk about that a little bit? Disneyland parent, it sounds like you studied up on that.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty well versed, and the thing is that you're gonna look like a bad guy at times. You're gonna discipline, and you're gonna hear like, I want to be at the other parent's house. It's gonna happen, guaranteed. Promise you. It will happen. It's not if, it will happen. Yeah. You know, or this doesn't happen at so and so's house. Well, this isn't so and so's house, and you know, at the end of the day, the boundaries, kids crave boundaries. I'm telling you. Even as people, I mean, you look at people of faith and even people not of faith, but we look towards other things to give us boundaries. We do. We're just a natural creature that craves boundaries. Yeah. And if you don't, there's probably something a little bit wrong with you. And we can have that discussion later.
You're probably a psychopath. I mean, you have no rule of law, you know?
Or you have, there's something there, that the cognitive dissonance that doesn't allow you to have that ability to have the affinity for boundaries. Yeah. But kids will feed off of it, and you may not get the bragging about doing one fun and exciting thing, but at the same time, like, I gotta go through watching my kid ride his bike, and I gotta potty train my son, and I got to see all this stuff that happened that, like, you know, I'll take more pride in that. I'll take a hug at 6:30 in the morning because he woke up early and he's trying to schmooze me to wake up to make him breakfast. Like, I'll take that stuff over going to Disneyland or going to wherever, doing whatever. I'm you know, and if he wants to have those experiences, encourage him. Like, you know, they're going to have those experiences, but at the same time, the affinity for the boundaries is going to come back. It's going to come back. And, you know, it kind of maybe look at some of those facts and everything. And there's a thing out there called the father effect. Yeah. And it's huge because those boundaries of the father effect, one, lack of aggression across the board. Every mental health professional, psychologist, psychiatrist across the board will absolutely say this: lack of aggression and a lack of promiscuity. You will find that across the board with present and involved dads. They're not going to be having risky, high risk, dangerous behaviors.
And that goes for promiscuity. I've read about that one. That goes for males
boys and girls. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'll just be honest. I'm going to tell you my own story. When my dad wasn't around for 3 years, it led me some really bad behaviors. And that was, I'm not a victim like Ryan, but I realized that I was.
I'm not a victim either, Shane.
I was, but I realized I was, you know, we both don't want to be in a victim box, but you have to realize when you were abused. And between the ages of 12 and 15 of my mother keeping me from my father was abusive. And I did some risky behaviors that I am surprised that I didn't end up in juvie or jail or something like that. And and even other stuff that was just stupid. And when I finally started seeing my dad, that stuff all went away. That stuff all went away. And so the dad effect, keep going, because I've got some other facts too. Keep going for some of your facts.
Well, fathers tend to be, and this is the cool one. I love this statistic was that kids learn things like skill based tendencies and things like that, like whether it's riding a bike, swimming is a huge one, even potty training. Kids actually learn better from their dad and faster because we tend to be less overprotective. And I'm not saying all moms are overprotective, but
sure, absolutely. Yeah, I get it.
It's kind of those things that, like, swimming is a big one. A kid will actually learn to swim faster from dad because we're willing to let them go into deeper water and actually turn their back on us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so you can go into like little fun stuff, but the big one is that boys especially learn their social skills from their father. And so dads, I'm looking at you right now, accountability. You've got to be held accountable for how you act and how you treat others, because your kids are learning those behaviors. Yeah. And even if they're little. And so, I've caught myself a couple of times, whether it's like, just driving in traffic and somebody cuts you off and you're like, and I hear my kid now saying like, people do it in traffic, and I might not say it. He'll be like, what an idiot. And I'm like, oh, okay, sorry about that. Yeah.
Where do you learn that?
Yeah, seriously. Oh, that wasn't me. Yeah. But no, but boys especially learn their social behaviors from their dad. And so but the thing is, the cool part is you will see that come out in them. And that's almost like and I get pride in that, because I try to go out of my way to be a solid person. Not just because it's to make people think highly of me. It's because that's my character. Like, that's what God's called us to be. Yeah. And I see my son being empathetic for somebody if they're having a bad day. I see him cracking jokes all the time. If you know me, like, I'm probably one of the more sarcastic people you ever meet. So, I'll see him, it's things trying to discipline him because I'm trying to discipline myself. So that's difficult too. But, it's those things of the social behaviors you get into. And then this is where I will touch on the toxic masculinity piece, is that if they're learning those things and you're told that your toxic masculinity is a negative thing and that masculinity is bad, newsflash, men aren't raised to be emasculated or demasculated. Like, they're not raised to be feminine. Can men be empathetic? Absolutely, they should be. Can they be tenderhearted? Absolutely, they should be. Should also men be driven to be leaders? Absolutely, they should be. Should men be driven to do things that, have the hero mentality? I think that's something that you see a lot in adolescent males. They want to chase maybe crazy ideas because they have the hero aspect. Well, that hero aspect, take the risk, but at the same time, they're going to learn. It's, you got to be, it's like letting them ride a bike. You got to be willing to let them fall in the grass a couple times. Yeah. The thing about a parent is that we're never going to let them fall too far. And that's, we've got to be present. And the thing is that don't just be around, you've got to be engaged. You can't just be there and hang out with your kid and watch TV I'm a present dad. That's not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. You've got to be engaged. You've got to be, involved in what they do. I had a great time. I loved the guys to death coaching at Lakeland High School. I was coaching football there and loved it. I quit because of my kid, and I gladly will do it every single time. I will, I got to have a huge influence in a lot of adolescent males' lives that may not even have dads, but my child was more important than that. My child's relationship with his dad overruled that. Yeah. And it's not going to be forever. I'll get back in. I still coach my kids' sports now that he's getting involved, but when he's doing his own thing or he's older, I might get back into it too, because there's kids that will need dads like you, dads like me, and I'll throw name drop my buddy Tristan that's probably watching right now too. There's a lot of great dads out there that we know that we've got to be engaged, and we've got to encourage other dads in what we do. And you talked about being a disciple at the beginning, right at the beginning. Fatherhood is discipleship too. We're discipling our kid, but also we've got to be discipled by other good dads that we know too. And mentorship is a huge part of that. And that's where the dadvocacy comes in, is that we've got to be willing to grab, if you see a guy that's slipping, let's go grab coffee. Tell me what's going on. And then how do we grow? How do I empower you as a dad to get you more active or get you to be better? Or what are you doing that I see that I want to do? And I think we see that a lot. Women are awesome at that.
They are.
Women are fantastic at that. We suck. And And that comes down to the mental health thing too, is that women are more willing to be open and honest. Men have the stigma that it's like, no, we can fix it. I'll just work through it. I'm going to work my way through it. I'm going to grind. And how does that work out? You know,
we are taught that like feelings are bad or good. They're not. Feelings are just are what they are. They just are what they are. And
feelings are natural.
It makes you a human. Yeah. So, but we're taught, and it's okay. This is probably what our dads taught us because they didn't know any different. But it's like, don't cry, don't be sad. And it's like I'm very recognized now. I'm very cognizant of telling my kids it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be mad at me, as long as you don't
makes you human.
That's right. As long as you don't have angry behaviors, it's okay to be those things because you know what? They're temporary. They're going to go away.
And I don't know what you told kids in your wrestling room, but it's like, say you've got a kid that, I had a hammer in my room for a couple of years, and, he lost a couple tough matches, and he would get super upset, like to where the point, like one time he almost punched it. Like I caught him before he hit the wall, and I was like, don't do anything. Like you can't do stupid stuff like that. The thing is that, the risky, the reckless behavior, like that's the thing that, you've got to be able to catch as a parent, and that as a dad, that's why our role is important. As a coach, I may have been slipping in that because, he's becoming reactionary, and things that we get upset about them because they're important to us.
Right.
And if we didn't get upset about those things, we wouldn't be human. I mean, you look at a marriage, and if your marriage wrecks and you're not at least a little bit upset about that, it's because you didn't care. Like there's no remorse. Like it's because you literally didn't care.
Yeah. And especially with feelings like with a kid that's losing, a kid that loses a wrestling match. Yeah. I think you should be upset.
Yeah.
I mean, did you give all your effort? Yes. Did you have a good attitude? Yes. But it's okay to be upset if you lose. Winning.
Yeah. You're not going to win every time.
Right. But winning is fun. Winning is really fun. And losing's not. And that's okay. And so tell me about some of the things that have happened, because I know you just mentioned it. Obviously, you had to grieve over your divorce. You had to grieve over the loss of a relationship. But what I have seen, Ryan, and knowing you these last 3 years or 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been, your life has just opened up. You're an entrepreneur now. You've started your own business. You're a great dad. You seem like you just – I know it's weird, but you have more stability now as a single person than you did. And believe me, I get that because you know what to expect. When you walk into a home that you come home to and you don't know what to expect, there is an incredible amount of hesitation and just unease there. So talk about that, because what I want you to know, I'm not going to put words in Ryan's mouth. I don't think either one of us are advocates for divorce. It is almost a last solution. Marriage is designed by God. I think marriage is beautiful. I think I love it when two married people just continue to grow together and evolve together. What I don't like to see is when two people are miserable in an unhealthy relationship and they are afraid to divorce because of whatever reason.
And they start wounding each other. That's the worst part.
Each other. And you know who they also wound? They wound their children. They
try to get everybody wants somebody on their side, and
that's right. So alienation happens, and so talk about. I want to give dads or moms, whoever's watching, that courage to maybe take that next step if it's necessary. If you've done lots of prayer, if you've talked to a counselor, your pastor, and you've talked to your significant other, of course. But what has positive become out of divorce?
You become you. I mean, it kind of sounds like a cliche statement, but you get a chance to become what you've been designed to be, not what you're expected to be by somebody else, or what you're told you should be.
And let me cut you off just briefly.
Go ahead.
Remember, when you're in a healthy marriage, that other person wants you to become you.
Yeah,
and you'll grow together. And I've seen this time and time again, and I've experienced these things. Go on, Ryan.
Yeah, and no, you hit it on the head. I can't disagree with that at all. You get a chance to let's say you get put through the crucible, you get tested, man, and you get purified coming out of it. It's painful, it's scary, it's hard. There's a lot of emotions. There's tears, there's anger, there's frustration, there's all of these different things. But coming out of it, you are who God designed you to be. If you check back in, or you are who you set a rule of absolutes. And I always tell people when they go through divorce, I've talked to a ton of people, especially through COVID, that are going through this. It's like, make a list of things you know to be true about yourself. And my dad told me this, actually, so I'll give him credit for this. But
That's awesome.
You got to make a list of things you know to be true about yourself. And if anything you hear deviates from that list, it's like you make a list of what you know to be true and what God knows is true about you. And if you hear anything outside of that list, it holds zero merit, holds no merit. Don't put any value on it. Don't carry it. Don't wear it. Get rid of it.
Well, you know what I've heard is take those things that you may have been called in your abusive marriage, whatever they were, toxic male,
yep.
Selfish, horrible dad.
Yeah.
Put them in a jar and go burn them.
Yeah. No, and that was even the best thing that it sounds terrible, but some of the most freeing moments I had was, those times where I would go for drives and, you'd hear a certain song or, just no radio at all. Just like, all right, like I'm just going to let myself kind of process through all this stuff. And you just, there was a couple spots that I would like to go park and I'd just sit by the lake. And, I would start like speaking things, and this sounds really weird, but this is how my mind works. I would speak things onto rocks and I'd throw them in the lake. The last thing that I did. And so I literally sat there. I sat there for like 2 hours just going through all this stuff of all the negative things that I carried. So I didn't have to carry them in my head anymore. The last thing that I did was I took off my wedding ring. I spoke everything that was negative about that relationship, and I threw it in the lake. It sounds like a really stupid thing to do, but for me, that was closure. It was like, all right, I'm done. Like I don't have to wear this anymore. And, like I can't go back and get it now. I can't go back to seek it. It's gone. It's like, am I going to find that same rock? Am I going to go find, that one piece of metal that's now at the bottom of a lake? No, I'm not going to go find it. And I'm not going to want to go seek it. Yeah. But in the process of that, through the divorce, like, God's good about blessing you if you're living in accordance to his will. And we talked about your favorite verse, I know, in Jeremiah. God's got a story for us and it's good. And he's got a plan and it's good.
But remember, it's his plan and his story.
There you go. It's his plan. And so if you're going to live according to his plan, for those that aren't religious, I'm going to put this out there though, your life is what you make it. But you have to realize that there is a story being told with your life, and it's good. And the ending is going to be okay. It's going to work out as long as you're making those healthy decisions, as long as you're checking in, as long as you have people that you can be in a relationship with that are going to give you positive feedback and let you set boundaries, and you're staying within those things are going to work out. It's going to get ugly at first because you know what? A lot of times, in order to make the biggest gains, you have to have a lot of losses. And, you look at like hiring a new coach, we could use that aspect of it. Usually the first year it's terrible and it looks like it's a disheveled mess. And then once the right steps and everybody buys into the foundation, things start turning around. But, in my life as an entrepreneur, I was in the corporate world. I really didn't have a ton of control. I just had to trust the system, and it was based on my effort. Well, I could be as successful as I wanted to be as long as I was willing to work hard. Well, sometimes when you become an entrepreneur, you become your own business owner. Well, my effort can dictate my growth, not just like my success, but it can dictate my growth. And, if I'm putting in that same amount of effort before that I had into the corporate world, into myself, I'm not doing it according to someone else's plan. It's according to, my goals.
You get to decide. How much you put in and how much you get out.
And the nice thing is that sometimes you don't have to put in the same amount of effort. It sounds your effort can be channeled elsewhere. Right. I've been able to do more things for my kid that, I wasn't able to do in the corporate world because I had that schedule that I still had to meet. Okay. But also there's things that I get to do ethically that I don't have to worry about anymore. I get to control where, at the end of the day, who's signing my check is me. And, if I'm signing my own paycheck, I get to do things how I know that they should be done, and doing things the right way. And that was the big, but the journey from where I was to where I am, I had a lot of people supporting me along the way. And the one thing I will tell you is be vulnerable, but be careful with who you give your vulnerability to. If it's involved with loneliness, if it's tied to feelings of not being enough and all those things, you don't need to be giving people value in those arenas, because that's a problem with you. That's not something somebody else is going to fix for you.
Yeah.
That's where pastors come in, accountability partners. You get some good buddies that always have a good life. I always look at it this way: is if you judge a tree by its fruit. So if you're judging your friends, look at the fruit in their life. If they're bringing in a lot of drama, if they're bringing in, rap sheets instead of, positive people into their life, or they've got more generosity going out the door than coming in, that's where you look at people. Like, you've got to be able to judge that, and I even take that into the dating world. I know that, when you're in a relationship with somebody, I've been single since divorce, but that's okay. Like, I'm being careful with where I give my energies, and that also has allowed me to be in a very pivotal time in my kid's life to be more present and give him the energy that he needs and deserves, and something that he probably wouldn't have if my time was divided. And that's all right. That's part of the story.
It's interesting that I have female and guy friends that are very logical. A lot of them are scientists, right? And I know one thing that's helped them after post-divorce or during a bad marriage is some of them even did this. I know I have wrote down what you want in your relationship.
Absolutely.
Right? Write it down. It sounds logical. It sounds non-romantic, but remember, Western world romance is fictional. And it's not good. God was never designed to do this Western world lust and, oh my gosh, it's the greatest time ever. Yeah, you're going to have those feelings, right? I get it, but make it logical. So come up with a list. And I have a friend, she lives in New Jersey. Maybe she's watching. I won't mention her name. And that's what her dad told her when she was a young girl. Write down what you want in your relationship. And I know I have that. And it's like, so it takes the emotion out of it. So when you finally do meet a person and you're going to be dating, you look at your list and there's 20 items there. And if they meet 19 of them, okay.
you're going to get told a lot that you are too picky or you have too high of standards. And you know what? Who cares if they're your standards? So,
that's right.
And we all know, Shane, you and I both, what happens when you settle, when you start negotiating some of your standards and you start trading some of them away and what you know that you need and deserve from somebody. We know how that works out, and it doesn't work out. And so I'm willing to wait, because I have my list of non-negotiables. It's a pretty short list, but they're there. And if the expectation of what's on that list isn't met, it sounds like, oh, I'm thinking that I'm super high standard. No, they're pretty basic. Like, be a good person, be generous, love the Lord more than anybody else, more than me, and more than yourself.
Yeah.
Well, we get caught in that a lot, but
I like it. And it makes you a better dad by not settling. And having said that, I also know, and I'm not going to name these dads. I'm thinking of them right now. Some of them are in the wrestling community, and you have inspired me and others to know that your second relationship or your second marriage, they can be great stepmoms, they can be great people, they can be great advocates for your own children. You can have these great blended families. So don't let that scare you away. And I know these people that have been happily had horrible first marriages, and their second marriages are just like bliss. And it can't happen. And they probably didn't, sacrifice their values either. So we're going to wrap this up. You're a great dad, Ryan. I want to talk about a couple of issues that are critical. Important, and they're issues that are now psychological terms that psychologists are now using, not only in psychological evaluations, but also in actually court systems and in court cases for custody battles. And I want you to be familiar with them. Again, you've heard a little bit about my story, about what my mother did to me and my brothers when my parents went through a divorce. So I'm familiar with these terms. They didn't really have a term for them back then, but they're all abusive. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Ryan.
and if I could interject one thing too, just to kind of close out my story, because there's something that I heard at the end. Like I said, the custody case took forever and it cost a ton of money. Heard something very powerful from the judge, and I was going for full and didn't get it. but I mean, I still have the majority of the time, but you know, with the joint legal side of things, but it kind of stung. And it's like, well, this is where we are as a society, is you're just a dad. I heard that and I'm like, ugh, like, are you kidding me? And you know, we don't, and it's like, and then what I heard was, we don't give dads full. And I'm just like sitting there, like looking, I'm like, if the shoe was on the other foot, I wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Like, I mean, it's, right. And so as this is why this is that one word, you're just a dad, or that one statement is the reason why I am so huge on the dadvocacy topic, because you aren't just a dad. You aren't. And I'm talking to all the dads out there right now. So like, hopefully this pierces your heart, but you are not just a dad. You are not. You provide instruction, you provide discipline, you provide comfort, you provide the encouragement. You are a source for your child, male or female, that is incredibly important. Incredibly. Don't lose your role. Don't ignore your role. Don't slight your role. You are very, very important. And then and just encourage dads to grow in that role.
I love it.
Go ahead,
and step up to the plate. Dads like you know how to do. Step up to the plate. And thank you for being such a dadvocate, Ryan. And so I want to talk about a couple of terms that are now, like, again, from my story, I saw it happen in my own life, and you still can kind of see it. And one of them is called the golden uterus complex. I know it sounds disgusting, but I'm telling you, it is now a psychological term, and it is used. I want to be very careful. I'm not saying all moms are this, okay? No, but look it up. Not at all. Go look it up. There are great moms, and I never attack anybody personally. I attack their behaviors. Okay. So, but it's basically, I'm the mom, so I get anything I want. And even if you get a girlfriend and we're divorced, or you get a wife and we're divorced, doesn't matter. I get to choose her, and I get to meddle in all your affairs, and so on and so forth. Go check it out. And it's extremely, and they have their own boundaries for themselves, and they have for the dad that may even get remarried. What I'm saying is, as a dad, to protect your own children and yourself, you have to put very clear boundaries on that. But go look it up, okay? But again, it's our courts kind of let's see what I say, advocate for that complex. Well, look what Ryan just went through. The judge told him, "You're just a dad." Oh, so by, I guess, contrary to that, that means a mom is kind of better, and it's like it's irritating to me. And so thanks for fighting for dads. Here's the other one that I really saw in our family growing up when my parents divorced. And I see it in a lot of cases now. Emotional incest. Okay. A lot of times this happens with moms because, as Ryan was already talking, moms are more emotional. Dads usually don't as much. And if you do, it's not good. You should never, ever, ever dump your emotional baggage on your children. Never.
Oh my gosh.
If you're sad, your kids shouldn't be sad.
Yep.
If your kids are sad, you shouldn't be sad. That's called codependency, very unhealthy. So what they're learning a lot with mothers, and I get it, go look it up yourself. I'm not exaggerating this. Go look it up yourself. Mothers tend to want to be especially their daughter's best friend. So they'll party with them. They'll do all kinds of crazy things with them, even when they're underage. Go to all kinds of crazy venues I'm not even going to talk about, but go look it up. And they'll also, instead of going to their partner during the marriage, they'll go to their daughter during the marriage. And it is equivalent to what they're finding, sexual incest. Yep. It is very, very damaging to the daughter. So there are daughters now that are 30 years old that are being treated for emotional incest because their mom wanted to be their best friend instead of their mom. Now, I know in our society right now, and I see it in posts all the time, I love it. My daughter's my best friend. You'll see these close selfies and they're sticking their tongues out like they're in a sorority and they're both 21 years old, but one of them's 40 something.
Yeah.
And it sounds good. Don't get me wrong. You can easily cross a line. I can tell you this. I don't really drink anyway. I will never party with my kids. Never.
Nope.
I may have a drink with them. I kind of doubt that because I don't drink, but there's just lines that I won't cross with my children. I will always be a dad. I never want to be a burden to them. So emotional incest and golden uterus syndrome, look them up, or complex, golden uterus complex, look them up, be very aware of them as a dad of fighting for your children. So, Ryan.
Yeah, no, I want to echo that because this goes along with your mantra of never be outworked, and dads, do the work. Don't be outworked in this role. And if it's getting more people, getting more info, Be encouraged, be informed. That's what's going to make you a better dad, and be more involved. Like that. Don't just be there. Like be involved. Like do something. If it's t-ball, help out. If you don't know how to coach t-ball, then keep score. Like learn something. Be there and be involved. And to kind of echo with what you said about the dads of daughters, here's a fact for you. Just putting it out there because it's absolutely true. If you have a daughter between the ages of 13 and 19, she picks up her cues on connection. And this isn't in the sexual sense. This is the connection that happens within the brain releasing I believe it's oxytocin. But your relationship with her, she will have the connection to you if you're present, that you will have that role of what is safe, what is healthy, what is secure, like what a woman wants in a relationship. Daughters pick up those cues from dads. So if you're not there, guess where she's going to find that? Somewhere else, right? She's going to go pick that up elsewhere. So if you're a dad with a adolescent or a daughter growing up, even more the reason to be involved and to be present in your kid's life. But I'm just praying for dads out there because it's a hard world right now. And it's hard for any parent. Let's just be honest. Like it's tough.
And I am thankful for married moms and dads. I'm thankful for single moms. I'm thankful for single dads. And we had a great show today on Dadvocacy. Ryan is a great guest. I usually ask the final two questions talk about never being outworked, but he already talked about it. It is not easy to be a single dad, and you have to work at it, but it also is very rewarding, just like any work that we do. And he has such a great story of overcoming a very nasty divorce, and he is living a life like he probably never thought was possible with his son and being an entrepreneur, and that takes an apparent failure to such a success that he probably never thought of. Nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced. But everything happens for a reason. I just firmly believe that. I have lots of friends that tell me that. So thank you very much. You know who you are. And so, Ryan, thank you very much. This is going to be available on SoundCloud, on Spotify, on iTunes, and also YouTube in a week or so. And we'll advertise that. We've getting some great comments and great interactions on this as I've watching this. So thanks, Ryan. We're going to have some more dads who will be guests. And there's some great Facebook groups out there. I wish I could remember the name, but one of them's, and I was invited to be in this group, and I think I invited Ryan too. It's called like the 1% Dad group or something like that. And I don't know, I'm not going to mention the guy's name because he might not want me to do it, but hopefully he's going to be a guest as well. But he runs that group and is just a great dad himself. And so thank you very much, Ryan. And thank you to all the listeners, all the viewers out there. Again, visit my website at drsneedham.com. Follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Parler. You can follow me there now as well as that new social media starts taking off. So thanks again, Ryan. You're a great guest, and let's definitely keep in touch. So thank you very, very much.